relatively empty. Most of the boats must have gone up the river to the sea for a day working the nets. Damon took a deep breath and then another, the fresh bite of the air settling his headache and cooling his skin, waking him up. He wasn't a small-town kind of guy, but there was something quite majestic about the mountains and the forested hills that loomed above him, especially now the sun was shining. He'd complained about the rain the night before to one of the locals, who'd then informed him of Deep River's average rainfall, which was some horrendous amount that sounded just wrong to someone from LA. Still, it did explain the solid 3-day downpour and made him feel lucky that it was a beautiful day now. Movement below him caught his eye, and he glanced down at the boardwalk. The kid was there again, skulking by the big wooden pole stuck in the boardwalk that had "Middle of Nowhere" painted down the side. A tall, gangly teenager dressed in jeans and a black hoodie. He always seemed to be in Damon's vicinity, and if Damon didn't know any better, he'd say he was being followed. Though, surely it was a little too early in the morning for teenagers. Weren't they supposed to sleep past 12 or something? The kid was looking straight at him, though he was too far away for Damon to see what expression was on his face. The fixed way the kid was staring was slightly unnerving. A woman came suddenly into view. She had shoulder-length blonde hair, and it was blowing around in the wind, a bright counterpoint to the plain jeans and t-shirt combo she wore. A parka pulled on over the top, and she moved with great purpose to where the kid stood. She spoke to him a second and then turned her head, and Damon found himself under the intense scrutiny of two people. His skin prickled, cool air moving across it. Moving everywhere across it. Oh, hell. He'd neglected to dress before stumbling out onto the balcony, and since he always slept naked... Yeah, no wonder both the woman and the kid were staring. He might have been able to get away with that in LA. People did things on the Sunset Strip in broad daylight that would make a streetwalker blush. But here in small-town Alaska, not so much. Cursing, Damon made a reflexive grab for something to cover himself with. His fingers closed around a handful of curtain, pulling it over his groin as he backed hastily through the doors and into his room. Great. Wonderful. Way to endear himself to the population. Not that he particularly wanted to endear himself to the population, but standing around naked on a balcony in a tiny town wasn't exactly his finest hour. Too many beers with Silas in the Moose the night before. That was the problem. And then on top of that, some homebrewed whiskey with a kick on it like a mule. Irritated both with himself and his hangover, Damon sat on the bed and rubbed at his temples, trying to massage away his headache. He'd come to Deep River mainly to see where the hell his friend Silas Quinn had gotten to, and yell at him about how he needed to come back to Juneau because Damon wanted to get rid of his share of Wild Alaska Aviation, the aviation company he'd gone into with Silas, Caleb, and another friend, Zeke, after they'd all gotten out of the military. But it turned out that Silas wasn't coming back to Juneau, and it was difficult to yell at a man who was blissfully happy having found love with the owner of the Happy Moose, his erstwhile best friend, Hope Dawson. And most especially difficult when that happy man had spent 3 days plying him with whiskey, towing him around Deep River, introducing him to all and sundry, and talking about tourism opportunities and investments and how much Damon's financial knowledge was needed. Damon dropped his hands from his temples and sighed. Silas had been very persuasive last night, both with his talk of tourism ventures and with the whiskey, and if Damon hadn't had urgent responsibilities back in LA, he might have considered sticking around for a while. Caleb, Deep River's former owner, had left the whole place to Damon, Silas, and Zeke in his will, and although none of them had actually wanted to own an entire town, he couldn't exactly leave the rest of them in the lurch, even if being tied down to Alaska was the last thing Damon needed right now. Hell, if that had been the only issue, he'd have found someone else to take up the mantle of ownership by now. But that wasn't the only issue. Deep River was sitting on a huge...